Hey, folks, listen up. This is going to be a fantastic little chat about hope and God just blowing us up in some ways that we don't even expect, wanting to heal us, but sometimes it hurts. So, Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Listen, I just read an article from Cedarville yesterday about you. It's, God's got his fingerprints all over this whole launch, chat, etc. I was like, wow, it's surreal because why don't you tell the story? I think the article did very well telling us about how you were not open to certain things and God kind of brought you to a retreat where, he basically made you vulnerable in some ways. So give us the story about this.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with a question. So
Go for it.
whenever you have a really big win, right, or something that you have achieved, and you feel like there's nobody there to celebrate with, right? Like, ooh, I did this thing, but nobody's really there to celebrate with, and you kind of feel alone, or maybe you do have people and they're celebrating with you, but you think they don't know what it took to get here. Like they can say good job, but they don't know what I went through. Or maybe on the flip side of there's a loss, or you're going through something really tough and you don't have the support, or again you do and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, and you're like, whoop-de-doo, like you don't know what
Right.
I'm going through. And you feel that isolation, you feel alone. But sometimes you're not comfortable feeling that isolation. So you put on this face, oh, it's, thank you
Oh,
so
yeah.
much. It's fine, everything's fine. But on the inside, you feel that alone, that isolation, and that was me. And I was totally acting fine on the outside. So I blame no one for not understanding where I was at,
Okay.
because I was fooling myself. I was fooling my own self with, oh,
We've been
everything's
there.
fine. I've got it. But on the inside, I'm thinking nobody knows what I'm going through. And I felt very, very alone and isolated. And I was reading the story of Blind Bartimaeus in the Bible, Mark 10:46-52. And when I was reading about this guy who was blind, and he was sitting by the side of the road, and nobody understood him. Nobody got him. He was literally blind and alone, literally isolated. And he knows, right? Unlike me, that was not willing to admit his blindness, he admitted his blindness and cried out, cried out. But people said, oh, shut up. Nobody cares about you. And even just making it that far in the verse, I'm thinking, this is me, right? This is me. And if I try to say, oh, somebody help, I'm going to get that rejection of, nobody, you're fine. Don't pretend like something's wrong. Don't cry out, blah, 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 blah. But he didn't listen.
Pleasing.
Yeah. And so he doesn't listen. He cries out louder, which I love. Like, I want to be that. I want to cry out louder. And, Son of David, have mercy on me. And then my favorite part, right? Jesus stops and says, call this dude over. And somebody says to Blind Bartimaeus, take heart, right? Get up. He's calling you. And I remember feeling in that moment like he was talking to me, right? Like, it's take heart, Laura. He sees you when you think nobody does. He sees you in your aloneness, in your blindness. Go run to him. And I think in that moment, what I found was I had been stuck in a cycle of, because nobody understands me anyway, I'm not going to put myself out there. Then because I didn't put myself out there, nobody understood me. So it was this vicious cycle of me not
being... The enemy had you quiet, silenced. You were wrapped around your own performance.
It was a total lie. And it was so easy to fall into. And, so much so I didn't even see it, which is why I was blind to it. I was blind to it. I was
blind to hope.
Yes, I was blind to hope. I literally, I was. And I was stuck in that cycle. And then one of my acquaintances, one of my friends, actually the wife of one of my husband's colleagues at work, said, hey, there's a women's group. They're starting a Bible study at church. Why don't you come? And old Laura was like, again, oh, no, nobody there's going to get me. I hate like being in groups of people where I feel alone. Nah. But then, I was like, okay, no, Laura, right? Take heart, do the thing, go do the thing. So I went to the Bible study, and they split us up into groups for prayer. And the very first mom that shared a prayer request said, I yelled at my daughter this morning for like spilling cereal. And I'm not an angry person, but in that moment, I yelled at her. I feel so guilty. I feel like mom guilt.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, okay. I'm not alone. I'm not unseen. People are in there, in the thick of it with me. And I felt like my eyes were like whoosh, opened to that lie that I had been believing and living in, that I was alone. I was not alone. And so through that community of women that were vulnerable and willing to get into each other's lives and pray for each other and build a tribe, the Lord worked in that, and he worked in me, and I just transformed from that blind person to somebody who felt whole, who felt hope, who felt seen. And this was 8 or 9 years ago. And so
wow.
I know. So as I've been processing this, I thought, it would be awesome if there was a place for people to go when they're in the same space that I was, because I'm not alone kind of in that. The more that I've talked to women, it's like, oh yeah, I can relate. I get it. I'm there right now. And the irony is, since writing the book, I have heard those lies in my head, right? Again, of nobody gets it, Laura. Nobody knows what you're trying to do. I'm like, hey, you wrote a book on this, right? Hey, maybe try to act out what you're preaching there, Laura.
Yes.
So I really wanted a place where if that's you, and you're like, nobody gets it and nobody gets me, that there is hope. And it's not in me. It's not in my website. It's not in my book, but it is in Jesus Christ. And the more that we can connect to each other and connect to him, there is such power in that community to say we are not going to be blinded by that lie of Satan that says we are individuals alone trying to make it through. We are a community. We have a tribe, and there is hope. There's hope together. There's hope in Christ. And so that was the thought behind all of the things.
I love the subtitle, See Beyond Your Darkness and Walk into God's Vision for Your Life. I think the reason why I'm just blown away by this whole message is I can see myself in your book. And I feel like a lot of people, if they're honest, it's the same thing. Like back when I was a pastor struggling with self-injury, like that's crazy. Like what? The Bible, you have a master's and a bachelor's in Bible. What are you doing, man? But I was totally blind to hope, and then finally you might have some freedom, but I didn't dare share it with anybody. I was like, no way. I'm not going to share it with anybody. And then God all of a sudden's like, no, I want you to tell your story in your secret name. And then I was like, I'm not doing it. And here's what I felt, Lauren, maybe you can relate. God doesn't force us to do things, but I feel like God knocks on the door of our heart and says, fine, if you don't share, you're going to miss out on a huge blessing. And don't you feel like that's kind of the story of your book? Like you didn't have to share this book. Everyone kind of thinks you got it all together. You're cool. You've made it through your journey. But now to go back and talk about your story, that's going to bring up some stuff. I mean, did you feel that?
I did feel that. And I think the thing that I have felt the most is I've read the story of Blind Bartimaeus so many times. I've lived my story.
Wow.
But I think at the end of the day, in both cases, it's not the story of Blind Bartimaeus, and it's not the story of Laura. It's the story of God and how he takes the time to see the people that are not seen. He takes the time to stop when he's the God of the universe, and he cares. He cared about Blind Bartimaeus, and he cares about me, and he cares about everybody.
Wow.
And the story is not us individually seeking him out, but it's how he seeks us out, and he sees us when we can't even see ourselves, won't admit it to ourselves. When we are stuck in blindness, he's the one that comes to us. He came to blind Bartimaeus. He came to me. I mean, I love that you shared. He came to you too. And that's the beauty of it, is that when we're not seeking, he's still seeking us. And I love that I continue to learn that through the process.
I love it. I love it. And it's powerful. I think it was Hagar where God says, she names God Elroy, the God who sees me.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And what aren't you seeing? What a powerful question. I love the book, by the way, the cover. It's so good. I mean, it's so good. And the story, it's estimated that 40 million people plus are blind. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to not be able to see? Isolation is likely high on those emotions. So you really believe that isolation, I mean, that if I tell people, hey, what does Laura's book solve? What problem? Isolation, hiding.
Mm-hmm.
Is this what you're saying?
Yeah, because I think for me, like I said, even though I was putting on that front, I was hiding a huge part of what was going on the inside. And it's hard, right? Because now I'm like, well, who am I in contact with? Who in my network is the same way? And maybe I don't even know about it because they're putting on that front. How do I be the type of person that will encourage them to open up and encourage them to come out of the isolation because they feel comfortable. They feel like there's a friend there. They feel like if they did share, they would not be met with the, that they would have somebody that said, been there. I no judgment. I can totally relate to that.
But I have a mentor, John Maxwell, and he got massively betrayed by somebody early in his career. And he says that he decided right then and there, I'm not going to trust people again. And what happens is he said when he was living like that, kind of like what you're saying with that front, he said nobody could hurt him, but then he said nobody could help him.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So it's like your book is actually brilliant because it's saying that's where the enemy wants you to stay. Is I mean, think about that. Like all you need to do is look at the wildlife channel, nature channel, whatever. What does the predator do? They get the sheep, they get the little animal alone, isolated, and then they're in danger. Is that kind of what you think is happening in our world today? We almost get it, even though we're the most connected with devices, we're almost the most isolated.
Yeah, and isolation, that thought of, oh, nobody gets me, I'm isolated. It's such a slippery slope from that to thoughts like I'm not valuable.
Yeah.
I don't matter. I'm unimportant. And then once you're there, right, then it is, and I was there, so I can speak to it. Then it is. You're depressed, you're desperate, you're in this horrible place. And it can start with that simple lie of you're not seen, you're isolated, and then before you know it, you're acting in ways that aren't even true to yourself. And I remember being in places where I'm like, I didn't want to get out of bed, I don't want to talk to people, and that wasn't me. That's not me. But I had been separated from the herd, right? I had been isolated, and it was just that slippery slope down. And it's so easy. And I think when you're in community and you're connected and you're together, people notice, right? When you start to maybe act a little different, or you stop showing up to community group, or your attendance at things is sporadic. There's community there to say, ooh, is something wrong? Are you okay? Come back to the fold. Like, let's be in community. But when you don't have that, there's nobody to spot those warning signs and say, you haven't been talking as much, or you're not coming as frequently. Are you okay? And then you end up somewhere because there wasn't that system of checks and balances. There wasn't that community
Wow.
to notice, to care. So it really is that if you can not be isolated, have
Yeah.
a community, there is power. There is power in that Satan is afraid of and doesn't want. And so it is
Wow.
absolutely a lie.
Well, and that's even, I mean, it was Jesus who said that wherever 2 or 3 are gathered, he's there in their midst. And so, you know, there is this power, whether it's the military and it's your battle buddy, sales teams, like even just if you're not a God follower, just practically speaking, you know, what is it, Ecclesiastes, where it talks about a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Like, you know, Laura, you've heard those things about, what is it, the big horses, and one can plow, you know, tow this much, but you put them together and they can like exponentially. So I almost feel like your business thing here, I love this, Beacon Insights, beaconinsights.net. And this is a great website. What do you hope happens? I see you already have some events coming in the new year, even in December. What if somebody's like, oh my gosh, I get, Laura, this is a call back to me. God's calling me. I was Blind Bartimaeus today. What do you hope happens?
Well, I think that I would like to have that community feel without necessarily it has to be a certain thing.
Mm.
You know, I don't want it to have to look like everybody dress up in, you know, suits and ties, and we're going to go and we're going to talk about how we're going to get better.
Mm.
It's more about sharing stories. And I think in the Bible, I mean, that's what Blind Bartimaeus, it was a story.
Mm.
And I think Jesus in the Bible, he used parables when he would talk because people remember stories. They connect to
I like that.
stories. And so,
like
you know, I think we're doing like a networking lunch and a connection happy hour. And
Yeah.
it's not where I stand up there and say, here's what I know, here's how I've got it all figured out, because I don't. But I think that in sharing stories of how the things that I have dealt with, the things that other women have dealt with, the things that the community has dealt with, then when you're in the middle of it and you're going through it, and that those voices come in of nobody gets it, I shouldn't be vulnerable, I can't trust people, you'll remember a story from somebody at that networking lunch or somebody at that happy hour that had a similar thing, and you think, okay, I'm going to choose to not fall into that trap again. You know, not because of Laura's 5 steps or whatever, but because of the stories and the power there. So I think my goal was to create that space, yes, online, but also in person, where people can come and hear stories and speak stories into each other's lives, because we're all part of one big story, you know. And I think that the less it is Laura's story and Kary's story and Amy's story, and it's our story together.
Yeah.
And we each can play a role, and we just need to play our role and be vulnerable and willing to step up and be not blind to hope and play the role, so we can help other people that are maybe not as far along as we are.
I love that. So we have that whole world, your transformational story, and then we met because of, I remember us chatting, Jonathan, who's your boss, partner.
Yes.
He's your
my
boss.
Yes.
And he has this amazing business. You work with him.
Yes.
And he was reaching out because he's in the midst of his book launch. We started chatting, and all of a sudden we had this Cedarville connection where you went there, and I'm older than you. And I teach there. So then that was a connection. And then it's like all these connections started to happen. And I'm so glad you wanted to publish this book with us. And then as we got into the marketing conversation, I said, you know what if Cedarville does a story on you? And this story that they're doing on you is amazing. And it kind of details this whole thing. But Laura, what would you tell someone today who's stuck? Because Bartimaeus, in my opinion, he was stuck. He was stuck in the darkness. And if somebody's stuck in the darkness and they hear, hey, the master's coming, the master's walking, Jesus is coming, why should they answer that call? Because it is painful. It's risky.
Yeah, I mean, because of what's the alternative, right? What's the alternative is you stay stuck. And I think the lesson, for Blind Bartimaeus and for me, he was not a kid, right? He was an adult. He was a grown man. And I was 30. I was 30, I think, when I was going through this.
Wow.
And I said, this whole thing happened 8 or 9 years ago. And so I think the process of going from being blind and being stuck there, it doesn't happen overnight always to where, now I can see and everything's great. It's going to take those steps, those actionable steps. I'm going to go to a community group. I'm going to reach out to Beacon Insights. I'm going to talk to my friend, whatever that looks like. You have to take the steps, and they're not fun. They're not easy. It requires vulnerability and humility and giving yourself grace all the time. But I think that having not, come through it, on the flip side, it literally brings me to tears to think about where I would still be.
Yeah.
If I had not been vulnerable, if I had not allowed myself, if the Lord had not said, Laura, take the blinders off, get up, take heart, he's calling you. If I had ignored that to still feel those feelings, it's almost like PTSD in a way of don't take me back there again. And I think that it is hard, it's messy, it's tough, but that's where, if you have other people who are tough and messy and hard, that community with you, it is so much easier, because you're not doing it alone, and the benefits far, far, far outweigh the cost every time.
I love it. And it would be a shame for you to still be stuck, because not only would you be stuck, but let's face it, when you become unleashed and on fire, you're able to help others become unleashed and on fire. So I want somebody right now who's maybe stuck on the road. They're desperate. They're dark. They're stuck in the darkness that we just said. If you think it's just like what I realize, Laura, is that sometimes people won't do it for themselves, but they'll do it for other people. You know what I'm saying? Like, right? You get to the part where a lot of us are much kinder to other people than ourselves. And I want somebody right now to be kind to themselves and say, you know what? I'm worthy of becoming unblinded, Well,
because Jesus says you are, right?
That's right.
Jesus says, I created you. I died for you. So you are worthy. You're enough because I am enough.
That's powerful. That's powerful. So I'm just so excited to see you on fire. I think I just read your bio. You have this amazing story. It's a little wacky. You have 50 pets.
I'm up to 63.
Oh my, we need to update your Amazon page. 63 pets and a homeschool mom and 2 businesses. I know what people are going to say. They're going to be like, what? How are you doing this? But could you have done all this if you were still stuck in the darkness?
No. I mean, I couldn't get out of bed. Seriously, I could not see past the next 30 minutes. I remember I was, a new mom, and I used to be like, okay, if I can make it until nap time, until he takes a nap, then I'm good. And then, we'd put him down for his nap and think, okay, if I can make it until my husband gets home from work.
Wow.
Okay. And then if I can make it until bedtime. Okay. And I had to literally segment my day. Just make it through the next 3 hours. I couldn't see tomorrow. I could not see anything. I was just blind. I totally was. And, now got the 3 kids, they're 10, 8, and 6, and all the pets and doing all the things. And that takes some kind of crazy for sure. But it does. It takes vision. It takes vision, which I absolutely lacked. Absolutely.
That's good. Well, listen, Laura, it is amazing. We're going to follow you on your journey. I would encourage everybody, you are getting the very first chance to see the book. It's not even out in all the versions yet, but this is a book that you definitely want to get. You want to get several copies. Christmas is coming, stocking stuffers, the whole thing. And unlike something that's coffee that you drink and you're done, this thing is going to like stick with you and maybe even set somebody free. So, Laura, thanks for being bold. Thanks for trusting God, stepping out. And we're just all really proud of you.
Well, thank you. Thanks to you and the team for all of your help. I mean, Ruthie's been amazing. I feel like she's like my sister right at the moment.
That's right. That's right. She was watching a little bit ago too. So this is great. And thanks so much, Laura. And we'll be following you. And I would encourage any woman, go to beaconinsights.net, beaconinsights.net. And let's get in that community with those events. All right. Take
Thank
care,
you so
everybody.
much.
See ya.
Bye.